Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera. Oof, that's a mouthful. That is a mouthful to say. They need to shorten that name down before it gets released in September. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera that has been announced in NAB a while ago now. This is a bit of a late video, and it's coming out in September. And before you guys decide to click away because you've seen these videos before, I'm not going to go over the spec, the features or anything like that. This video is not going to be about those. This is going to be more about why I think this camera is going to be a huge game changer in the prosumer camera industry, because I think this is really important to know, because many people have done this video going through all the specs of the camera and they're great, so I don't want to add to that. But this camera has been considered as a cinema camera, why it's called the Pocket Cinema camera and not a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Really, technically, cinema cameras and DSLR mirrorless cameras, there's not really a defined definition of what splits them up, technically. But cinema cameras are more aimed at the professional use, and mirrorless DSLR cameras, they came from the photography world and they've slowly been used for video in the consumer, prosumer type markets. But this is a small cinema camera that is the size of a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So you can really see the comparisons here between these two cameras. Normally cinema cameras are a lot bigger, a lot heavier, and just for professional use. But because of the size and the form factor of this Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K, I think, and the price, let me remind you, I think a lot of people, a lot of consumers, prosumers will be able to finally get their hands on a cinema camera for them to use and see the difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras and cinema cameras. I'm not knocking DSLR and mirrorless cameras. I'm actually using a mirrorless camera to film this. I'm not knocking that at all. They're great cameras and they've pushed the cinema world or the camera world a long, long way in the last decade. But there's a huge difference between those and the cinema cameras. And a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera has a lot of features that you don't really see or you've never seen on DSLRs or mirrorless cameras. But purely because this is the same size and form factor of DSLR and mirrorless cameras, I generally think this camera is going to push the other brands that produce mirrorless cameras, DSLR cameras, to push more cinema features into these cameras to keep up and to be competitive in the marketplace. This is why I think this camera is going to be a game changer, a true game changer, not because of the size, but also the price. Just recently, the GH5, the Lumix GH5 and the GH5S has had an enormous amount of credit purely because they can internally record 10-bit codecs. All DSLR cameras, or most DSLR mirrorless cameras, from my knowledge, only internally record 8-bit codecs. It's only been the last few years where you can externally record 10-bit codecs using external recorders, which can be quite expensive. This camera, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera, can produce not just 10 bits internally, but 12 bits, and not just 12 bits compressed footage, 12-bit raw footage. It's mind-blowing. GH5 and the GH5S have pushed the mirrorless camera market because of the 10-bit footage, but the codecs that DSLRs and mirrorless cameras use is heavily compressed codecs. So for professional users or more users that tend to want to get more out of that footage, that's okay, it looks completely fine out of the camera, but when you go to editing and then you try to color grade it and push the edit a lot further, then you will start to see the image will fall apart. And for VFX, if you ever make short films and want to use VFX and do chroma keying, you'll see that this is going to be extremely hard to do with compressed footage. That's when you need RAW. For you guys that don't know what RAW is, the difference between RAW and the compressed footage you get out of these cameras at the moment is when you record in compressed footage, it's smaller in size, but it bakes in every settings that you put in the camera. So once you choose the ISO, the white balance, and everything like that, it bakes all that information in, compress that down to a compressed video for you to use. So you get a lot of restrictions in post. But raw footage, it doesn't compress any of that. You can choose the ISO, white balance, and all your settings in the camera yourself. But once you export, once you put that from your memory card to your computer, all of that information you can still change. You can go into Premiere Pro and change the ISO, change the white balance, and all of that, all those settings in your camera in post-production, just in case you got it wrong during the shoot, which is great flexibility to have when shooting, especially if you're using this for client work. But because raw footage are huge files, and as you can see with the BlackMagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera, it has a USB-C type port for you not just to charge things with the camera, which is pretty good use, but you can also record straight to SSD drives, USB Type-C SSD drives, which is great. And they have that feature because raw footage is so much more larger than compressed footage. So I would recommend that if you get one of these cameras and because you want to shoot raw, I wouldn't advise you to use raw footage just for YouTube videos, especially if you're making videos every single day, because then you have to buy a lot of hard drive space, and then the price does start to stack up. But especially if you're doing client work and you're a professional filmmaker, raw is a must have. Raw you need to be shooting in. If you're shooting compressed footage, it's not great for the client, and you want to make as good products, as good videos as you can for clients. So this is a great, I still can't get over the price. This costs $1,300, $1,295 to be precise. And the fact is that when you buy this camera, you also get Blackmagic's Resolve Studio, which costs $295. So technically this camera costs $1,000. And you're getting cinema grade features with this, which you never have gotten before with DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, and it's a small size. It's got a micro four thirds sensor. It's actually larger than a micro four thirds sensor. It's got the same sensor size as the GH5S, which is larger than the previous Lumix, but it's still micro four thirds mounts, which is pretty decent. A lot of users, especially Lumix and Olympus users, can easily adapt to that. And if you've got Canon lenses or Sony lenses, you can buy like a speed booster adapter and then use those lenses with this camera. So this camera, I think, is going to be a game changer. It's going to push other camera manufacturers to push raw footage, push all these codecs and all this cinema features that you get with the Blackmagic to the mirrorless and DSLR cameras in the future. I really hope so. This is why I want to make this short video about this. And if you want to know more about the specs, I'll try and find some links of some good videos for you to watch. I didn't want to make another video about the specs and all the technical parts of this camera, because I think this camera is going to be mind-blowing, especially for the price and the size. It's gonna be great. For the price, I am a bit skeptical about the quality though, because it's so cheap. So you can't expect for this camera to be as good as something like a Red camera, because a Red camera, the price of Red cameras is completely different. So you can't expect that quality. But for $1,295, you're getting 12-bit raw footage to be able to internally record to. You're getting XLR ports where you can plug shotgun microphones like this one directly into your camera, and it syncs up to your camera footage, and you have phantom power to that. There's plenty of other great features like the 5-inch LCD screen, which is great. The menus of the Blackmagic, which is great. And one last thing I really want to talk about, why I think this camera is going to be great, is everyone talks about resolution as being a higher resolution, the better quality footage, which is not always the case. But this shoots 4K, so it's good resolution. But to get better cinematic looking footage, it's also about a dynamic range and the color science of the camera. The colors of the camera is such an important thing, and that's why you got 8-bit, 10-bit, and 12 bits and 16 bits, because then you have more colors. That's why GH5 and GH5S have had a big, it's just been appraised for the 10-bit internal recording it can do, and this camera shoots 12-bit internal recording, which means even more colors, which means better quality footage. And also BlackMagic are known for their great color science, because they've been known for their industry standard color grading. BlackMagic DaVinci Resolve, which you get with this camera, it means the color science is going to be up there with the best. Which means you're going to get some really great footage and really silky footage that you can do a lot of color grading for you guys that are really into that for your footage. So that, I think, in itself is going to be a game changer. Be able to color grade raw footage, just like cinema cameras in the feature film shoots. Maybe they won't be that good, but they're a step closer to that standard for a tiny price. Which is amazing. So if you guys are interested in shooting raw and need features that a cinema camera has, I think this is a great entry cinema camera for anyone out there that wants to make a jump up, and for the price it's ridiculous. I mean, mirrorless cameras and DSLRs, there's more expensive ones out there. One last thing, I know there's not really much of a flow or format to this video. One last thing I want to say is that they've improved the ISO of this camera, the dual native ISO up to 25,600, I believe, which is great for low light shooting. So there's a lot of things this camera can do, and it's going to be extremely flexible to use. I think it's going to be a game changer in the industry for the 12-bit RAW for the price that you get it for. It's going to be phenomenal. So if you guys want to know more about the text and specs of this camera, I'll leave some links below. I really hope you liked my positioning of this video about this camera, because I just didn't want to make another video of these hundreds of videos that are already out there. I wanted to talk about more the professional side of things and why some people choose cameras, or why professionals choose cameras for different things. So I think this camera is going to be great. I can't wait to get my hands on one. It looks phenomenal from what BlackMagic have announced at NAB, and I really appreciate it if you could like this video, if you like the information that I gave you, and if you really like this video, please consider subscribing, because I'd really appreciate that going forward. And I will bring you more videos about me being in Sweden, which is another part of my channel, and also more video tech reviews and more information, and just help and teaching you guys how to make better videos. So thank you guys for watching this video. I really appreciate that. Until next time.